We hear about unemployment numbers all the time, right? But today, we're going to look at what those numbers are actually telling us about a whole generation in South Africa. Because this isn't just about jobs, it's about the very idea of adulthood being put on hold. And honestly, it's a crisis.
You know, in most societies, there's a pretty clear path to growing up. It's this sequence we all kind of expect. You finish school, you find a job, you start earning your own money, and then you get to be independent. It's the basic deal, the social contract.
But what happens when that path just disappears? For millions of young South Africans, that whole sequence is breaking down. That promise is broken, and it's leaving an entire generation just stuck, caught in limbo.
And this matters. It matters a lot, because a job is so much more than just a paycheck. It's how society gives you the nod, you know? It's the signal that says, okay, you're a grown-up now.
Think about what a job really brings. It gives you independence from your family. It helps shape your identity. It gives you some social status, a sense of dignity. Really, it's your entry ticket into the whole economy as a contributing adult.
And here is where the sheer scale of this crisis just hits you. Nearly half. Just pause and think about that. Nearly half of all young South Africans are completely locked out of this critical part of becoming an adult. This is not a small, fringe issue. This is a huge, defining feature of the country. And when you're dealing with numbers that big, you just can't call it a collection of personal failures anymore. It's not. This is a systemic failure, a structural problem that is literally delaying adulthood for an entire generation.
So, if the formal economy isn't supporting these young adults, who is? Where does all that pressure go? Well, it gets pushed somewhere else, right onto the family.
And this brings us to this really powerful idea of the household shock absorber. It's exactly what it sounds like. The family unit becomes this kind of private, unofficial welfare system, forced to soak up all the economic and emotional stress the wider system has created.
And you see this playing out in very real ways. A grandparent's small pension that was meant for one person is suddenly trying to support 3 or 4 adults. You have parents who should be retiring but just can't. A single income that's stretched impossibly thin to feed a whole household.
And this is the stuff that never makes it into the official reports. The unemployment rate doesn't measure the guilt a young person feels for being a burden. It doesn't capture the resentment that can build up under all that financial pressure. It's a silent crisis, happening behind closed doors. Now, this all gets so much worse, because education is supposed to be the one sure thing, right? The great equalizer, the guaranteed way out. But what happens when that exit door is also locked? This right here might be one of the most unbelievable stats of all. Even for young people who did everything right. They went to university, they got a degree, nearly 1 in 4 of them is still unemployed.
So just try to imagine that for a second. You followed the rules. You put in years of hard work. You bought into the big promise that your education was the key.
And then, crickets. Nothing. The job, the independence, the future you worked for, it's just not there. The deal's off. The contract is void. The result is sadly completely predictable. It creates this toxic mix of frustration, deep personal shame, and maybe worst of all, a profound sense of betrayal, a feeling that the system you were told to believe in has lied to you. This is way more than an economic problem. It's a crisis of faith.
And that sense of betrayal, it leads us to another really critical point. We have to debunk one of the most damaging myths about unemployment. It is so easy for society to just slap a label on a young person who stops looking for work. Lazy. But the economic reality is something totally different. It's called discouragement. And laziness and discouragement are not the same thing. Not even close.
Here's a really powerful way to put it. A discouraged young person isn't opting out of work. They are opting out of disappointment. It becomes a totally rational choice when the emotional cost of searching and getting rejected over and over again is just too high. It's a survival tactic.
So, let's pull the camera back. We've talked about the individual, the family. What does all of this mean for the future of the entire country?
The long-term risks are just massive. When a huge chunk of your population can't start their lives, can't buy homes, pay taxes, or build families, your whole economy stalls. When people feel the system is rigged against them, social trust erodes. And eventually, when a generation loses all hope for the future, democracy itself is at risk. Which brings us to the single most important thing to take away from all this. This is not a youth problem. To call it that completely misses the point.
This is a national design problem. It's about the very structure of the economy and society, and it affects every single person. So it really all boils down to one final, stark question. What kind of future is South Africa actually building? Is it a society where hard work leads to a real, independent life? Or is it becoming a country where, for millions, true adulthood is a promise that's permanently out of reach?